Okay, welcome everybody. So let's fire that Miro link in one more time. Let me share my screen as well. Gosh, I've been doing Zoom and Miro all day. You'd think I'd have figured it out by now, and yet I am still still struggling. Here we go. Right, Miro link going in for the final time. At any point in this with questions, it's probably for my benefit, it's probably going to be easier if you can use the raise hand button, because I'm not going to be able to see chat in the screen share and all that kind of stuff. So if you got questions or anything you want to points you want to make, please use that, and then at least I'll get some level of attention that you want to talk. Probably ought to introduce myself before we get going. So yeah, my name is Andy Hiles. I'm a professional Kanban trainer with ProKanban. I am a professional Scrum trainer. Gosh, I almost said Kanban trainer with Scrum.org as well. See what my head has been today. I'm the author of this awesome pointless book that you'll see in the Miro there. I thought some subtle branding might help with this course. So what are we talking about today? ProKanban has launched a new course, metrics for Kanban metrics for Scrum teams, and I was invited to have do a session or invite a conversation into talking about that. And this is a session I've used generically to introduce those concepts. Now, the one thing as we walk through this, so there are going to be some people on this call who are incredibly experienced. And there are going to be some people who are less experienced and are fairly new to Kanban metrics, flow metrics, and Kanban itself. What I would invite you, because I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. For those who are more experienced, invite the conversation to happen around you. If you really, really know the answer, just hold it. All right, you might spot where we're going with this. This little session is a little bit more of a you've seen those mentalist magicians where they say, haha, but did you think of this, right? So that's where this session is going. If you can see where it's going, please hold back, let other people, but facilitate that conversation. So we're going to go for, I don't know, another half an hour or something interactively, going to put you into breakout rooms, which is going to push this Zoom recording. It's going to be quite fun. And I'll be giving you some instruction as we follow. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. So if you can hit that Miro link, come along into the Miro. If you are struggling, we're sharing the screen anyway. We're recording. You can come back and see what's going on. Right. So that's an intro of me and all that really good stuff. But you don't want to hear any more about that. Let's get going. So we're going to talk about a particular or one or two particular flow metrics here today. Oh dear, I want to hit V. I want to hit V for that reason. Let me summon everybody on Miro. Come along to me. So we're going to have a look at this. Let's turn all these off. I'm going to propose a scenario to you. So you are halfway through a sprint. This is a Scrum with Kanban. Okay, so you're going to have to forgive the fact that it says Scrum in here, Scrum language. Okay, so you're halfway through the sprint. The team have already completed 4 product backlog items. The developers realize, and this is the best wording ever, that a brand new super urgent product backlog item, so a brand new super urgent product backlog item is missing from the sprint backlog in order to fulfill the sprint goal. Lots of Scrum language. Something's been missed out. Okay, the product owner wants to know the earliest date they could have the brand new super urgent product backlog item, and it was at that moment I realized I regretted calling it that thing when I have to repeat it. Can you pull in extra work into the from the product backlog into the sprint? That's question number 1, right? I want you to go away and have a conversation. So can you pull in extra work during the sprint from the product backlog? You know, we've missed something. We need to do the super urgent product backlog item. The other thing I want you to have a think about is what information would your team need in order to explain if they can do it within the current sprint. So the product owners come along to you and said, this has got to fulfill the sprint goal. You messed up. Can you do it? Can you pull it in? And what information do you need to be able to tell me whether it's a yes or a no? Okay, so there's an extra bonus question I thought about earlier, which is, when you're thinking about answering this as a problem, what assumptions are you making when you're answering this? Okay, so a big question there for you to have a conversation about. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. There's going to be 11 of them. That's going to be pretty awesome. There's going to be 5 to 6 people per room. So conversation, you're going to have to kind of try and keep succinct. What I would like you to do is try and have a conversation in those, going to give you about 5 minutes. Try and have a conversation, answer those couple of questions. Can you do it? What information would you need? Right, so what are you looking for in order to answer that question? If you can put that on one post-it. So I don't want to see like loads of post-its because it's going to flood it and we're not going to be able to pick out some of the information. Okay. So that's what I'm going to ask you to do. So I'm going to send you away. I'm going to create the breakout rooms. This is the scary moment. Let's see whether it works. I'm going to send you away for 5 minutes. Go and have that conversation. Put some post-its in that area. And when we come back, we'll continue our little story. Good. Let's have, I'm just going to move some of these over. I'm still sharing, right, which is good. Let's take a look at what we got over here. So, what, you know, can we pull it in? I don't know. Did anybody say yes? Can we pull in extra work during the sprint? Anybody want to answer that? I'm seeing, is that Alison I'm seeing? Hello. Nice to see you. Yes, Alison, you'd be correct. Yes, we can bring stuff in. Thank you. I've just seen that one. Okay, so what extra information do we need? What value? What can we delay, take out? What's the current velocity? Okay, interesting. What's the cycle time? Interesting answers. Has it been right sized? We're getting some kind of expertise level stuff coming in. If the effort and complexity significantly does something of equal size. Wow. Oh gosh, we got somebody saying they were kicked out, and yeah, okay. Let's get rid of those. Yeah, thank you. Let's get rid of that one. Yes, under conditions. All right, okay. So what's the actual value? But nobody can tell me when it's going to happen. I'm not seeing anything that's kind of giving me a level of confidence. You know, if I'm your angry stakeholder, you know, when am I going to get it? Oh, we need to consider all these things, Andy. It's not that simple. But surely in Scrum gives us all the answers, and we can just tell you, oh, it's going to be next sprint, right? Or this sprint. That's how Scrum works. Yes, no, I'm not getting, you know, does anybody know? Okay, let's continue. Let's continue with our little story. So follow me, people. If let's, I don't want to delete it, I want to reveal it. So if you could see the Scrum board, because nobody really talked about visualization. Visualization is one of our key practices of Kanban, right? We need to be able to provide a visual indicator of some sort. Nobody talked about visualization. Everyone went straight for the other two. They went for they went for inspection and adaptation based practices. So here's a Scrum, here's a Kanban board, or is it? So I've given you some visualization here, right? So this should surely help you. Super urgent product backlog item could come into this workflow. Can you do it, right? What more information? I'm a product owner. I'm an angry stakeholder. Surely you've got this board in front of you. What more information do you need? All right, so I'm going to put you back in your rooms. You've got the board in front of you. You've got some more information back in your rooms. We're going to open it for, again, 5 minutes. Off you go. Going with us, me, while we take you through this. Okay, cool. So somebody has fallen for my trap. I'm not sure who put whip limits on, but you've fallen for my trap like any good magician. Let me summon you, bring everyone to me, summon you over here like a good magician. Yes, what I thought you would say. Whip limits. So I'm going to give you some whip limits. Oops, I don't want to rename that. Okay, cool. So we now have a board. We have a problem statement. We have a board. So we can see our workflow. We have some whip limits now. Okay. What more information?
It's a trap. You said it was a trap, Andy. So what are you supposed to get from that?
Don't worry, we're getting there, right? So there is
you try to trick us, Andy.
No, I just know. I just know what people are going to say. It's quite fun. When I created this, I was thinking, what would I say? Oh, this is what I would say. And then I just went what I would say. So, hey, look, you're thinking like I would. Right. So I'm going to send you away. We've got whip limits. We have a board. right? So we've got more information than we did before. I mean, think about Scrum, right? How many Scrum teams? And I know there are some good people out there with Scrum teams that do have WIP limits and good workflows, but right, we're told, Kanban solves all problems with WIP limits, right? So you have some WIP limits. I'm going to send you back into your rooms. I'm going to give you this, this is more information. Surely, as the angry product owner person, you can answer this problem for me. Can you do it? What more information do I need to give you people? Okay, so a few more minutes into your rooms. Good luck. Welcome back, everybody. It's probably the last time, or one of the last times I'm going to send you away for this session. Who was saying it's a trap? I'm not that cruel. Whoever was shouting at me is a trap.
I wasn't shouting, just saying you said it was a trap. So you had my brain. I was getting paranoid.
No, it's good. And this is the thing. This is what this should be doing. It's kind of like making you double think a little bit about what you believe you're told when you're taught Scrum. Okay, and what people teach other people when they teach Scrum, and actually what Scrum really is. So my version of Scrum is I call Scrum a conversation framework. So every month we have a dedicated conversation around certain topics, and we meet every day, right, to have a conversation. That conversation will form different options, and the options can be given to us via different mediums. So one of the mediums is the Kanban boards or Scrum boards or whatever you are using at the moment, and if it's WIP limited, you're kind of heading more towards being a Kanban board. And I was saying to Pratik in the break today on one of the courses, I was digging out old photos of Kanban boards and laughing at some of the fun we used to have in physical spaces with Kanban boards. So it's good to see we finally got to hear this part, part 3, where we've got some kind of, we seem to have kind of like gone metric mad now. So, you turned off all the other ones and you've gone, oh no, we just need metrics here. We've got a hand raised. Matthew, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, and you didn't talk about policies. What are the policies in those columns, or it's just explicit with these sort of like numbers? Because our group, we were talking about that earlier, and then someone had noticed that there's a WIP limit on tests is 2, and we've got 3 things on that.
Yeah,
so someone called it out, and I didn't see it, right? So what's the policy?
and these are. And this is precisely when we're kind of teaching the classes. These are the kind of precisely the conversations we want to be having with teams, where they're coming along and going, hang on, like WIP limits here exist, it's 2, but you've got 3 things going on. What's going on there? What choices could that team have made in order to get themselves to that position? Why did they choose to break the WIP limit on that one? Right? Was that a conscious or unconscious choice? Like you say, right? Policies exist to help the team with flow. So why did that team break that policy? I would hope their policy is, we have enough capacity to pull, right? So there might be a policy sitting around saying, if we do break our WIP limit, this is what we should be doing. But we still don't have enough information here to answer our product owner question. But we're just seeing some maybe bad practice in the board. But you're right, you are right to call that out, right? There's other things going on this board that just, aren't quite right, potentially. Okay, so let's move on. Right, so some more information, and there was a persistent, what was making me chuckle was there was a persistent ticket that kept coming up, was cycle time. I was trying to kind of hopefully avoid those voices being too prevalent through this, because really we need, this isn't the ultimate answer, but this is a lead into giving you much more information, right? And the story goes, for me personally, when I was starting out, somebody once said to me, put some dots on your Post-its, right? And I went, brilliant. And I said, well, what that tell me? And they said, well, how long things have taken. And I said, brilliant, I'll start doing that. So I started putting dots on my Post-its, and then I didn't have anything to do with them. It's like, what? Now I've got all this. Now I've got this interesting information. What am I going to do with it? So we can put dots on our Post-its, right? And it can tell us a couple of interesting things. So one of them is the metric that was called out earlier. So once we total all of those dots up, and it gets to a state where we feel that item has been completed, right, or is finished. Now, Scrum talks about done being the ultimate finished, right? So things are done. So when work potentially hits done, we create something called cycle time. And cycle time is effectively from when you consider work to have started to when you consider work to have finished, right? It is an elapsed time over a number of days, but it is an elapsed time. It is a metric. It is one of the flow metrics we can use. The other metric that we can use by putting dots on, and this is where Jira does a terrible bad job. You will have all seen Jira where it's got those dots and then they just disappear into the ether and you can't do anything with them, right? So Jira does a terrible job of this. There are better tools. So dots can tell us the age of the items, and the age of the items is really, really interesting. So we've got some more information. So if I kind of like zoom on this bit of the board, we've got some more information about what's happening in this system here. I know, by the way, as per previous times that I've run this, I know the board is slightly different. I've eliminated some of the build ready columns in there. It doesn't matter. This is just it's just for information, okay? But we can see there is something going on here as well. We still don't have more information here, but we've got some information. So we can see how work is aging towards being complete. We can see how work has aged previously in our cycle times over here. So you could make some kind of assumption here that work that's sitting in these, I mean, certainly in test, could be aging abnormally, right? We need a little bit more information before we can make a judgment call on that. But this is one indicator. Now, if somebody had told me that years ago, I'd have gone, now this makes sense. This is why I'm capturing dots on my tickets every day, right? This is why I understand that each day is an aging onto this ticket. And what more the ticket ages, we're potentially wasting an opportunity to go and complete that ticket, right? Or something else is going on. And again, as Matthew brought up, right, if it's breaking our width limits and it's aging abnormally, something really, really bad's going on, right? What are we doing? It seems we're completely ignoring the policies going on. So we've got this super important product backlog item that's coming on the left. It's a big obvious circle. I think that's pink. I'm colorblind, but I think that might be pink. Somebody nod at me if it's no. Yeah. Oh, I've got the thumbs up, so it's definitely pink. Okay. So we've got this super important product backlog item. We can see how work has been aging, and we can see some indication of how long work has taken, but that's not the end of the story. We need to do a little bit more. Let's get rid of that. So let's bring, oh gosh, see, I told you I shouldn't be in charge of computers. We need to be able to look at our SLE. So you may have come across what we call the SLE. Some people would have heard the old school, word SLA, service level agreement. Well, this is our service level expectation. This is when we believe our work to complete. So on the top bit here, I've got kind of an indication of what cycle time for this team could be. And in order for us to generate this, we can use data, cycle time data that we have captured, work that's started and completed and has aged, etc., but completed to form our cycle time. We can go and create this thing called a cycle time scatter plot. By the way, this cycle time scatter plot won't relate to anything else. It was one I generated for the book, so just bear with, okay? But we've got some data of our history of how we have performed. Now, notice none of this, I've not mentioned Scrum at all, right? So your cycle time could relate to any point within your sprint as to when work started and has completed, right? You could have started something on day 9 of a 2-week sprint and actually completed it, 10 days later, right? It will have generated a cycle time, okay? Whether you're breaking the rules of Scrum, we can talk about that another time, but we need cycle time in order to generate this information. So we have a chart here, which is basically how long things have taken to complete and how many per day effectively over our sprint length. Let's take it as a Scrum one. So this could be sprint start and sprint end. This is any kind of time period that you wish to pick. And this is how many things completed and how long they took to complete. Right? So it's a scatter plot of completion. in order for us to generate our expectation for the team, we can do something quite simple. We can take a total count of the items in that scatter plot, and we can provide a level of understanding of the likelihood of a single item that comes into our flow, our super important product backlog item, I think it was, completing in our flow as was, right? So our workflow, and we can make some assumptions if our workflow doesn't change, based upon our cycle time data, how work has progressed, how work has completed in the past, we can make an assumption that going forward, then there is a potential that work would complete in the same way. Now, I have to kind of strongly highlight the word assumption, because there are many assumptions when I say assumption, right? So we could assume, we have to assume that, well, we have the same people potentially, or we're working on the same product, or we're working on the same technology. The more you step away from how you have worked previously, the more risky it will be. But when we go and calculate our cycle time and our service level expectation, which is our conversation back to the stakeholders to say, look, if you want the super urgent product backlog item, this is our potential of this thing happening. We can go and calculate that. So what we would do is add up all the dots on this, and we would find where 50% of them lie. So 50% of these items have completed in 2 days or less, okay? So what we communicate back to our product owner when they say, okay, when can I have that super important product backlog item? We can say, well, look, you've got a 50% chance of that happening within 2 days. So do you want to take 50%? Do you want to, if we started it today, do you want to take a 50% chance of us completing it? You know, where are we? We're Tuesday by Friday. Is that the risk you would like to take? Or perhaps let's look at our data and look at a less risky strategy, right? Let's look at something around 3 days, right? So if we start it today, there's an 85% chance you will get it in 3 days or less, okay? And that's the power of an SLE. It takes us out of the idea of Scrum having these sprints and, you know, when am I going to get this thing? Are you going to get it next sprint, right? Which is I've been on the other end of that, and that is the most frustrating thing to hear. You know, go and speak to another team. When can I have that thing we're waiting on? Yeah, it's going to be next sprint. We now have a way of communicating a potential date for a single item that comes into our system. Again, we have to work within the bounded assumptions that might change in our system, but this is something at least we can work with. So we're talking about a 15% risk of this thing not happening within 3 days, or we're talking about a 50% risk of this not happening within 2 days. Okay. And it's all generated by very simple things, right? All we did, start date and end date. And even better, we looked at the age, which was just a count every day. And those two things combined can form that superpower. So when we start to look at, you know, and certainly, I mean, this doesn't matter whether you're doing Scrum. I thought here we go. Sorry, I thought I'd already pre-unlocked that. It doesn't matter whether you're doing, oh gosh, it's me and computers. It doesn't matter whether you're doing Scrum, whether you're doing anything. Okay, if you're looking at your workflow, yes, this doesn't have WIP limits on it. If you're looking at your workflow and you're looking at some flow metrics on top, so, you know, cycle time as a great indicator, and your age as an even better indicator, we can start to have better conversations as a Scrum team. Okay, because this is about Scrum. We have to bring this back to Scrum. This is a conversation that not many Scrum teams ever enter to, but you have all the information at your disposal. This is what I find absolutely crazy. You will all have this information. Jira will have this information. Your physical boards, Azure DevOps will have this information. There are plugins for those tools that you can use to go and get this information out and start having this conversation. It is all there. It's just going to take a modicum of effort to go and dig this stuff out. So now we have some more information about this thing, the super important product backlog item. We've got some more information about our system. Yes, I'm gonna hold to Matthew's point and imagine the WIP limits are there. Yes, our WIP on test is super high, right? So we've probably got a little bit more risk going on there. Yes, we've got a whole load of work going on, and it's aged, over our SLE going on over here. Would you still want to take the risk? And that's your question, Right. So I'm going to send you away for another conversation. You have some more information. Imagine those whip limits are there, and I think this was a 3. You know, sorry, it was a 2, wasn't it? Up here. Let's put sticky. That was a whip 2. 2 was on that one, right? So you have some more information, right? Can you do this thing? Would you do this thing? You're halfway through the sprint. You've completed 4 items. Would you pull this thing into your flow? Okay, so that's your conversation for the next 5 minutes. Breakout rooms. If you are more learned, so I think there are some PKTs in this class. If you're in one of the rooms, try and facilitate those conversations, etc. Go and have a good conversation. Get some stickies in that area below here, and we'll see where you get up to in 5 minutes time. Oh, I need to make a suggestion. Right, you'll get a pop-up which will say join the breakout room. It's not me forcing you to go and join it this time. And I'll click that one as well. Okay, so I will see you in 5 minutes. We've only got a couple of answers. What was the gut feel? Would you do it? Would you take the risk?
Depends.
Oh, that's what my
say
yes.
That was coming.
Depends.
I knew it was coming.
Of course, we take the risk.
So somebody had to say that.
Somebody had to say that. But so, okay, I just want to pull on that a little bit, right? So I've given you some cycle time. I've given you a little bit more information. There's more, and this is the thing. There is more going on here, which we just don't have time to talk about. And your it depends. I mean, can you like summarize your it depends? Why are you cautious?
Matt, it is up to you.
Okay. I mean, for those who are sitting on the it depends like fence here, would anybody like feel confident to kind of just Sohail, is that you kind of volunteering?
I will speak to what Gabrielle was about to say, which is we said it's related to the sprinkle, so it should be brought in. It really becomes a question of when do we bring it in, and how do we get everything that's already above our SLE or rapidly approaching, how do we clear that up first? And then we have the ability to bring it in.
So and this is the thing, there's more going, like there is more going on here. There's probably, and this is, so when we're looking at creating our definition of workflow, we're still missing some indicators here around what the kind of types of work are. Do all of these things, I think somebody mentioned this, do all of these things relate to the sprint goal that we have to go and take them on? What are we going to do with these things that are aging massively, right? They are just sitting there. How are we going to tackle those? There's loads of things to explore here. That is your teaser for kind of flow metrics with Scrum. As I said, ProKanban have a new course out. I mean, I've got a lovely book, which is why I'm kind of dragging the screen over. But ProKanban have created a new course dedicated to this, dedicated to having these kind of conversations, created by the lovely Pratik, who is sitting there with looking happy. I don't know, you're really small, so I'm hoping you look happy.
Where's the dog? Where's the dog? I don't see the dog. There. Okay. That's what I come to see is the dog. No, I'm just kidding. So, anyway, so that's your teaser into learning more. Okay, so I'm hoping that might have kind of got you thinking about what's going on when you're looking at your Scrum teams. What you're seeing, is it what I'm really seeing? Is there more going on behind there? There is so much more to explore in these kind of topics. Anyway, there's a link to the book, there's a link to ProKanban, and there's a link to the group of trainers that I work with. We part of the Scrum facilitators. Come and have a look at what we do, and come along and join some of our courses sometime. That's it. I've got you out in an hour. Not bad.
Thank you, Andy.
All right, nice one. All right, I'm just going to post a link to your book in chat, make it a little easier. And yeah, thank you, Andy.
I'm more than happy to stay for another like 5-10 minutes if people want to. If you wanted to end the recording and people want to ask questions.
Yeah, I do.
More than happy. So yeah, go. I mean, if you want to ask questions, please put your hand up and we can stay and have a chat. Maru, I think you've got your hand up first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, Taz, I had something that was burning my lips. So I've tried my hand on doing some some different kind of analysis than the probability segmentation that you do usually with Kanban. I've tried it for quite some long. I tried time series analysis in different formats. So I was wondering, any of you, and I know there's the two gurus from Dark and Agile are also here, at least one of them. I forgot the name, but these two gurus from Dark and Agile. And I really always wanted to know, does anybody else try time series analysis, another kind of time forecasting, history-based time forecasting on this kind of data?
So I know the name only from probably about 20 years ago, but that's about the limit of my understanding. Pratik, I'm going to hand that over to you straight away.
I tried I tried doing a bit of this 3 or 4 years ago, actually, and just to level set. It's a good thing that cycle time and throughput and all these things are time series data. So you can do all these fun things with it, which have traditionally been done. The things that I know definitely did not work when I tried this was stuff like curve fitting, even ARIMA type modeling. I did that, and that had terrible results, probably mostly because the underlying data is not stable. The underlying data is not stationary and keeps moving. It's possible to do it, but it did not. When I tried it, it did not give me great results.
Yep. Same thing here. My data, it was quite catastrophic. There was very little. There was very little trending, and there was also very little cycliness, basically. So cyclicality. Sorry, that's the word. And also there is another problem. I forgot. I got to check my notes. There is another fundamental issues with all the types of data I got. I thought if I keep following people and getting data from other people than my clients, I might find something that would work. But I guess there's something fundamentally more, not random, but maybe a bit too chaotic about how we do.
It's that our data is too discrete and does not follow any standard distributions, and that just kills most of this analysis.
Cool. Thank you for your question. I think Taz, you did have your hand up.
No, go ahead. I kind of got my answer in some ways. So Farouk can go.
Okay, as long as you're sure. Okay, cool. Farouk, please, what's your question?
Hi everyone. My question is, does this calculation work only if each item is roughly the same size?
So yeah, it's an incredibly common question. Does it work well, I mean, probably the answer is yes, the calculation does work, but probably the question you want to ask is, do you have to have every item the same size? And I think this is where we get into the realm of variability even when you think you've got everything down to a particular size, whatever you judge size to be, there's still going to be unknowns. There's still going to be things you discover. There's going to be built-in variability and uncertainty into whatever you are doing anyway. So even when you think you've got something to a comfortable size for a team to bring into a sprint, you're going to find it's going to go, the developers are going to find something and they've got to do something else with it. Does that kind of help answer the question very briefly?
Sort of. I mean, I guess there's no straight answer to this. If you continue, I suppose if you've got a big enough sample, you've been doing it long enough, I suppose then it ought to sort of cancel each other out. So over a period of time, everything will roughly sort of average to the mean. But I think in the early stages, if you've got some big items and some small items, and you might just got instinct, you might find that it doesn't quite work.
So I mean, there's quite a few things going on here. This is where it gets like this is the bit I find really fun, because this is like, oh no, it's so cool. Okay, so the cycle time scatter plot that we showed earlier with the dots like high and low, they have no relation to size. Right. The most interesting thing about capturing cycle time is the bit we don't know. And the bit we don't know is how the team worked to get items to that cycle time. Okay, so it could be the super urgent product backlog item came in and we hyper focused, and that thing got really, and this is very typical if you play any of the Kanban simulations, or you have work going on in real life and a problem comes in, everyone hyper focuses on it and it gets fixed really quickly, but then everything else suffers as a result and the cycle times for everything else go up. But what you'll see, if you just looked at a cycle time scatter plot, you'd say, oh, look, we've got some really cool things over here. The fun bit about that is the thing that got done really quickly could have been really from if you're going to look at sizing, could have been gigantic in compared to everything else, right? Really tough, really difficult, needed everybody on the team. And this comes down to, it's more about how you act on the work or with the work versus how big it is. It's one of those things, of course, size does come into play, right? So when you're starting to look at forecasting, and this is where we get into what Scrum thinks size is. Scrum just says, can it fit in a sprint? That's Scrum sizing, right there. We can start to use flow metrics such as SLE to start to help us with sizing. We can start to say, well, look, Scrum says, can it fit in a sprint? And also, does it fit our SLE? And then if our SLE outstrips our sprint cycle, then we've got a different conversation. It's like, oh my, what are we going to do with this? I wrote down a really interesting question which I wanted to propose to people. I'm not proposing anybody answers this now, but it goes on. I'm sorry, I'm an old man, I have to hold things at arm's length now. It's so embarrassing. But this was the question I wrote down earlier today, was if your team thinks it won't fit a PBI into a sprint, should you not start it? Man, there's so many double negatives in there as well. But it's on that sizing thing, so if your team thinks it won't fit as in a sprint, but you're on day 8 of 9, should you not start it? It still holds value. We could start that work. It's not going to get done in the sprint. Why wouldn't we start it? And we get into those kind of conversations. So going back to your original thing about size does matter to some degree, but we can use techniques to be able to understand size a little bit better. But it's really how you act on the work. So great question. Sorry, I get really super enthusiastic when I get into this, oh, it's such a cool question.
That's good. Great answer as well.
Thank you.
Craig, go for it. Get your hand up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So that was kind of related to my question, because do you ask this, do you find, I guess the question is, do you find that the way people answer depends a lot on their background or their context? The reason I ask that is I've done a lot of work with teams working on SAP. SAP is a ginormous ERP system, and pretty much every requirement that came from the users was a boulder. It was not, 5-story point 7. It was 10 to 20 to 50 times the size of anything that you'd ever assign to a team. So it was something that was always decomposed. It was never, but that's usually not the case for the vast majority of teams that are building web systems or other systems. And typically they'll see stuff and they hardly have to decompose it at all, maybe a little bit here and there. But for teams that are doing government stuff, ERP stuff, decomposition is absolutely a mandatory must. Thou shalt never, ever work directly on an actual feature. So for them, they would say, well, I have no idea if it'll fit or not. Probably it won't, because you're just showing us a naked requirement from a user. So they would have to go through that decomposition process and everything. So I'm just curious if that, have you found that pushback, or do you typically not work with government folks, or what sort of context?
It's so not limited to government folks. What was that? I am trying to find, okay, here's the photo. Right, let me show you this photo. Can I share this? Sorry. This was a bit of work I did a couple of years ago. I wish I'd taken more photos of this because it was so much fun. So this was taking a single product, a single commercial product. And we had how many teams? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, probably more teams working on a single product. Part of my role was to help them shift from terrible Scrum to better Scrum to Scrum with Kanban, and put, I mean, this was self-imposed, right? This wasn't a mandate. So it was getting flow metrics into Scrum teams and using Kanban practices with Scrum teams. So that was part of it. And then I went, well, you know, that's only optimizing over there. Let's go and have a look at everything else. And so I created this monster, which I changed every couple of weeks pretty much based upon the conversations that were happening and the conversations that weren't happening, and trying to drive different conversations into that kind of decomposition problem. Because so in the middle, you can see epics, right? And I think by the end of where I was working, I said, you are not allowed to say epics anymore. We banned the word and we started talking about features, or, you know, things that were valuable, right? We got rid of that. And then going left is all the upstream bureaucratic stuff that typically happens in organizations. And like, you know, you talk about government, I've worked with kind of public sector places. Oh man, yeah, okay. So, so this was my way of trying to help them visualize the stifling process that was flowing into just the teams. And this is hiding everything then that the teams are doing. So you can imagine exponential growth and decomposition happening here. I mean, I was talking with Pratik last week, and again, this is a topic I get really, really excited about, is managing decomposition. Is how do you help people understand the problem with decomposition, right? You propose an idea and it goes, and then at some point something pops out the back and it may or may not look like what you wanted originally. That's some of it. But also, how do you go and manage the whole flow that brings decomposition to life? Now, the funniest bit of this picture, does anybody want to take a look at this picture and point out what I found hilarious earlier today? Anybody spot it?
What, reduced detail?
No. Can anybody see? Can anybody see the whip?
I have one thing.
Yeah. I saw the 30 there, and I was wondering what.
Yeah.
1830?
Actual, yeah.
I mean, I made 18 up, right? I just went, you know, 18, I don't know, it was two per team or something. And I was like, we got to have some target, right? And then when we counted, it was like 30. It was like, this is why we're not getting work done around here, right? What do you think we ought to do? And then you've got the please, my passive aggressive, please stop starting and start finishing above that level. So, you know, again, great question, decomposition, but when we look at kind of flow, again, this is kind of where I get super excited, is like flow. How do we take what we know, what we preach at a team level, and then help everything else around those teams work, and kind of, you know, using Kanban at a portfolio level, helping people understand decomposition using the same metrics, right? And we can use the metrics, we can probably tune them to understand things slightly differently as well. I can't remember what I was coming up with earlier, which I thought would be kind of useful around decomposition metrics. But yeah, so thank you, good question. And I'm going to stop talking because I could talk for a very long time on this subject.
Okay, I think, are there any other questions? Yeah, very good. All right, fantastic. Yeah, thank you, Andy. Really insightful session. Lots of great takeaways, some great questions, great answers as well. Thanks to the audience as well for the participation. And yeah, look out for our next session. I'll post the link to the YouTube channel. So that's where the recording is going to be. So make a note of it. If you can subscribe, if you hit the bell icon, it automatically sends you a notification as soon as the video is uploaded. That's worth bearing in mind. But yeah, everyone have a great evening or afternoon, wherever you might be. Yeah, and yeah, look forward to seeing you out next session. Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Andy.
Cheers, everybody.